Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. You're listening to Author's Corner, where we highlight and showcase our local authors. Today, I'm speaking to Christina Jones Barkley, author of From Fear to Fearless. And Christina and I are going to be talking on the topic understanding the role of fear in your life. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you, Myrna. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I am interested in this conversation. Fear is the bottom feeder of all negative emotions. And usually when you are in the grip of fear, you're not able to do much with your life. So great book, great topic, and I'm going to enjoy your conversation. All right, so let me give you guys a brief summary of Christina's book, From Fear to Fearless. Too often, fear keeps us stuck, avoiding risks, missing out on opportunities, and living smaller lives than we'll like. Whether it's chasing a dream, speaking up, or making a life-changing decision, fear has a way of holding us back. From Fear to Fearless, Christina Jones Barkley offers an unexpected way forward. Instead of fighting your fears or trying to erase them, she reveals how to build a healthier, more empowering relationship with them. By embracing practical strategies, heartfelt stories, and timeless spiritual wisdom, you'll discover one, understand the true nature of fear and why it shows up. Two, face challenges with clarity, courage, and self compassion. Three, identify what truly matters to you and let that guide your actions. Four, shift your mindset to find strength even in life's uncertainties. Christina's approach doesn't promise a life free from fear, but it does promise freedom through fear. You got to get through it.
Yeah.
So amazing. All right. So as we dive right in, Christina, I want to ask you. You write that the goal isn't a life without fear, but freedom through fear. So let's start off by setting the table. What role do you see fear playing in our lives?
Okay, Myrna, I'm glad you asked the question. So fear makes us lose focus and become irrelevant in our purposes and the calling of our lives. And if I should take you back to scripture, because I'm Christian here, we see Second Timothy 1 verse 7. He says, God hasn't given us a spirit of fear,
Yeah.
but of love, power, and of a sound mind. And he did not say that um, there is no fear. He says he has given us the tools to fight fear. And with that in mind, fear will cripple us. It will make us paralyzed and make us miss out on our miss sorry make us miss opportunities. We're unable to walk into the path that God has given us, which is to live a fulfilled life, a rich life, not really rich as in prosperity, but rich in terms of pursuing your goals and your ambitions. But fear, the word I hate, this word, fear, will actually cripple you in such a way that you will never achieve your goal. And that's why I wrote this book, saying that you don't have to live in fear, but freedom through fear. Because when we say that, we're basically encouraging the readers, encouraging people in general that you can live with fear. Because fear, of course, if you're cornered with maybe an animal or whatever it is, you of course going to feel, to respond and to protect yourselves. But there are times when you have to understand that there is a negative, unhealthy fear, and that unhealthy fear is you should not embrace it. You should not welcome this because you have the power within you to push it out and to pivot.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you introduced when fear is healthy or necessary. You're right. You're walking through a dark alley and you hear someone behind you, or you hear a growl coming from the woods, and it's an animal or something.
Definitely.
That is what.
Yeah.
No,
And
but we don't have to write books about that. We're
yeah.
writing books about the fear that paralyzes us to live healthy, normal lives. And it's really interesting. I love my work. I do a lot of reading, and God always puts a book in front of me just as I'm having a conversation. And this week,
Definitely.
I'm reading a book about life traps, and one of the life traps is passed on from your parents, like an overprotective parent, unfair. And there was this one lady that refused to go in a subway, refused to travel alone, refused to go outside in her own driveway because she's afraid. That's the type of fear, and that's a life trap because
Yeah.
you're right. You can't proceed in life. I mean, what happens if you got to go to work and you've got to you got to go in the subway, but you're afraid of going. So fear is right. It's a crippling thing. And
It
as I
is.
started off by saying, it's the bottom feeder of all negative emotions. I think they all link to fear, to be quite honest. So
Definitely.
it's very true. But you also say something that I find very interesting. You say sometimes it looks like fear, but it's not. Explain what is the circumstances around that?
Yes, I said that, and my understanding is that from reading is that there is good fear and there is bad fear. And when I say healthy fear, unhealthy fear, and when we talk about the good fear, we're talking about the reverential fear, with the fear that is it's spoken of in the Bible so many times that we should reverence, we should respect God and stand on His laws, precepts, and statutes. That is a healthy fear. That's what He wants us. But the unhealthy fear is the fear that makes us want to retreat, to isolate, to refrain from even being in the community with your friends. That is the unhealthy fear. And in terms of how do you know it's something else? Again, you will know if it's not a healthy fear because you will feel so trapped and so crippled that you start to become so anxious, and when you become so anxious you cannot perform, you cannot achieve your goals and your aspirations, and years come 365 days in a year, and then you find yourself just going around in a circle, and you're not able to perform to your optimal. This is what I consider to be unhealthy fear. And how will you know for sure? It will, like I said before, it tend to be lean towards decision making. You become people who have been presented with choices, presented with options, but are so paralyzed by this fear, paralyzed by the indecisions that they aren't able to commit to any decisions, and this is what I consider to be something else. It cannot be healthy. It has to be something else. And another way you could look at it is that if you felt that you have been like held back by something, if you see other people maybe surpassing, um, maybe reclaim new territories and find new opportunities, open doors that you yourself wish you could have, there is something, whether it is in your past or in your future, that is affecting you, and you have to stop and pause and say to yourself, "Am I really suffering from fear? Or what is it? Something is holding me back." And if you find that
Procrastination,
something is
maybe?
holding you,
Yeah, right, right, right. Yes, that's good.
definitely. And if you find that something is holding you back, of course, again, if you try to put your hand on the doorknob and you realize you're worried about what is behind the doorknob, then of course you realize that there is a big issue here. You're suffering from something else, and this is not a healthy fear, because you need to be able to push and to weather the storm. And when you push through, you will find that you will achieve your highest goal, and things that you never thought that you could achieve, you will achieve.
Well, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you get to the other side, when you get through, which is basically why I love your words, when you get through it, a lot of times, in fact, when I first started coaching, one of the things that I would quote all the time is feel, this quote, feel the fear, but do it anyway. Because
Do
a
it.
lot of times you feel afraid. You wonder, should I go back to school? Am I able going to be able, that I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to do it. Should I apply for this job? Should I move to another city? But what they're saying is you should feel the fear because
Yeah.
it's good to be cautious, right? It's
Yeah.
good to have some trepidation. But once you face it, once you do it anyway, it becomes to get a less hold on you. The more that you give it, is the more that it's going to take care of you. When you start off with one fear, and next thing you know, you have a multitude of them because
Definitely.
it just takes on, it just
It
becomes
does.
on you.
It
Right.
does. And it restricts you. It restricts you in such a way that when time passes and you're wondering, why have I not accomplished some stuff? Writing this book, I mean, this is a process in itself. And today I'm here speaking to you. If I had procrastinated or if I decided, you know what, I'm just not going to think about it, it's out of my scope, it's uncharted territory, then in that way, then I wouldn't be here with you. And so I pushed and I did the action, like in terms of making the plans, doing the small steps, and little by little, you realize that there was a little fear there, but I knew exactly how to erode that, how to weather
Yeah.
through and fight and get through to it. Yeah,
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
feel it.
Comes
So
back to my quote. It's very true. Very true.
it is true,
All
absolutely.
right, so let's talk now about the six common fears. So, I might have a different, list than you. So let's talk about what do you think are the six common fears?
Okay, so yes, there is, when you say common fears, there are a whole lot of fears out there. I was just going through YouTube and maybe the different books reading, and fears that existed then, you realize that if you go on YouTube, you'll see it. And when you say the six fears, I would have to start with fears such as the fear of heights, for sure. Many of us, we're afraid of climbing. We're afraid of even just as minuscule as maybe climbing a ladder. We decide that it's too much for us, and that's because the higher you go, there's this level of anxiousness or anxiety. And so, yeah, that is one fear. And then there is another fear called claustrophobia. That is the fear of being clustered in a tight space, or
Mhm.
you know, being maybe in a tunnel, or maybe just climbing into or entering an elevator. You realize that that's not for you. You feel some form of fear that something bad is going to happen, it's going to fall, or whatever it is. So that's another kind of fear. Like I said, there's so many. The fear of moving from one location to another. That's another type of fear. In my book, that's what I wrote about. That kind of fear kind of it had me, and it resonates well with me. And there is fear of spiders. I'm not sure about you, but a lot of persons are afraid of spiders, right?
Acrophobia.
And
I don't
so,
know why I know that name, but I've obviously I've
yeah,
obviously seen it somewhere. Right, right. The
yeah.
spiders, right.
For sure. And there's fear of snakes, and fear of flying. Of course, usually in my days, I was really like the first time I took an airplane, I was really scared of flying.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest one is the fear of public speaking. I
I
found
know you're
that,
gonna get there. I
yeah,
know you're
I
gonna get to
found
that one,
that,
right?
yeah, I found that the public speaking part, it's really, it resonates well with a lot of people. And that's because it actually it's crippling, and knowing that you're going to have to stand before this large crowd, you're going to have to speak, and you're going to have to articulate very well, or whatever it is. Maybe you don't even know the subject matter, you don't know the subject, the topic itself. So it brings on this kind of stress and strain on you, and you become really anxious, and you fail. You just rambling, you fail, right?
Yeah.
But with preparation, I realized that in my book, I wrote about it. With preparation comes the strength, gives you the strength and the boldness to master anything that you touch, because you're able to to prepare in such a way that you will fight those butterflies. You'll be able to know the tips and the little tricks as to how to overcome that. And yes, so these are some of the fears that I have in my book. And there is also one of the biggest ones right now is the fear of the unknown. No one knows for certain what's going to happen. People are really like stressed out about the economy, about the political, affairs, and the wars and the rumors of wars, and just about everything. Fear is just like at the tip of everyone's head right now. It's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah, and so with that in mind, I also wrote this affirmation in the book that the unknown is the unknown. Just keep steady and resolute, knowing like for us as believers, we know that we have faith, and with faith
Yes.
comes, we can kind of deter fear. We can actually ride over fear because that is what Christians and believers, that's what we dwell on. That's our engine, right? Our faith,
Right,
and
exactly. Right, exactly.
definitely,
That's amazing. So
yeah,
we started. I asked you for six, and we could keep going because you're right.
yeah,
There's so many things. My son-in-law has a fear of dogs, and I mean a fear of
yeah,
bridges. I mean we can go on and on and on. But as you started talking, I
yeah,
remembered that Napoleon Hill talked about some of the biggest fears, and he talked about the fear of death, the fear of poverty, different ones that you're talking
yeah,
about.
mhm,
It's not the functioning fare. It's just
yeah,
I guess the background fare. But let me talk to about a couple of the ones that you just mentioned.
yeah,
We all know the fear of flying. I mean, I think fear of flying and the fear of public speaking are two of the
mhm,
most common ones. A lot of
yeah,
people have those ones. And, my daughter, let's touch there. My daughter had a fear of public speaking and she worked through it. She worked through it. I give her a book and she worked through it. And I will tell you, I had the pleasure of seeing her be the keynote speaker this weekend for Juneteenth at a
amazing,
prison, in Maine. She was a keynote speaker. The room was full of men and in a prison, and she was not, she was fearless. I stood
perfect.
there and I watched this girl, and she wasn't even nervous. And I said, "How come you weren't nervous?" She says, "Well, I couldn't be nervous because I didn't want them to think that I'm afraid of them." But the point is that she knew her material
Definitely,
or whatever, and she knocked it out of the park. And this girl was afraid of speaking to five people, and now she was
yeah,
speaking to a caseload. So that's one of the
absolutely,
ways that and many people I've heard about this public speaking fair where
mhm,
they would sweat buckets and their underarms
yeah,
sweat and they're drenched, but you
definitely.
have to speak, right? So
You
they
have to
go
speak.
and they speak, and sooner or later, like I said earlier, once you face the fear, it goes away. A
It
little
goes
bit
away.
chipping. You can't expect the first time for it to go, but if you keep doing it, like if you've got to speak, right?
Definitely, yeah. So just
You
keep,
can avoid, right. You can avoid
yeah,
dogs and avoid bridges, but if your career means that you got to speak, you're going to speak. But
definitely,
the claustrophobia one is not one that you hear as a common fare. But I'm going
yeah,
to mention that because that was one, and you know, I didn't label it a fear, but I
mm,
just label it, um, I'm not sure, a defection or something, because this is what happened to me. I went to a spa and they wrapped me up in cellophane and put me in a tube thing that's supposed to
mhm.
sweat me or whatever. And they put me in this room and my hands are tied and I was in this thing and a girl left me in there. She went outside for 20 minutes and I'm sitting there and I developed this fear of claustrophobia. I mean, at the time I was working where I had to take the train to work and I realized that I couldn't get out the train. And then when I started flying, I had to start taking pills because I realized I can't get out of that airplane either.
My God,
But I keep working with my mind, not thinking about it, not thinking about the outside, not thinking about
definitely,
it. And now
definitely.
I'm over it. But yeah, so
Great, great.
those are the things. Go ahead.
And I'm glad you said that because Myrna, to your point, you have to shift your mindset because yeah, the mind is a powerful thing. And go back to that scripture. I know not everyone will understand, but I want to reinforce the point that when the Lord said that He hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind, He's talking about a stayed mind. You've got to filter. You've got to know what to filter in and what to keep in and what to filter out. The garbage. Okay, within your case, you said you were wrapped in this thing. Of course, I would be scared, like scared to the point that what is this? Like, why is it taking so long? And why am I in this thing? But once you reframe that mind to say, okay, it's not going to take too long. Probably it's just for 5, 10, 15
Right.
minutes.
Right.
And then after that, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be somewhere else, maybe in LA or wherever, drinking my whatever. Yes, once you start to shift that and
Mhm.
try to think that which is, healthy, that which is pure and positive, then you realize that it's no longer, you can master that. You can master
Yeah, you
that
can
fear.
master it. My
Hmm.
fear of being, claustrophobic and whatever,
Yeah.
I had to really work on my mindset to just not think about it. And that's how I did
Yeah.
mine, but I like what you thinking, what you said,
Yeah.
think of the positive, you're going to
Yeah.
be drinking
Whatever it is.
on the beach somewhere with your, nice little fruity
Yeah.
drinks or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
That's one way to do it. But
That's one way to do.
I just didn't think about it. I just didn't think about, okay, you know what? I can't get up and go outside of this airplane or this train or whatever. So I think I put my mind on something else. And that's one of the reasons I have this show because transform your mind because it works in every area of your
Every
life. Your mind
aspect.
is your guiding operating system, and you can
Definitely.
use it to do anything you want. So that is
Absolutely.
amazing, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're having a great conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
So you also have some strategies in your book about how, when fear threatens us, how to hold them back. I give you mine and my daughter. So what is another strategy that you can share with anyone that's listening that if they're in the grip of fear, I don't know, climbing a ladder or something. What's a strategy that you can give them to
Yeah,
get past that?
of course, there are many tips and tricks in the book, but of course, for one strategy that I would talk about is first, in every fear, is first step is identifying that you have a problem. And
Mhm.
identify the problem weighs you down, right? And it can become a larger problem. So what you do once you've identified that, then you can try to break things down in small segments, like small bites, small chunks. That's my go-to. And once you do that, you will be able to digest the smaller chunks much easier. And so you don't look at the fear as being massive, at this massive dinner feast that cannot be devoured. If you get what I'm saying, it cannot be devoured. It cannot be swallowed. It cannot be, consumed. What you do is try to realize that, okay, maybe I should go back to my past, or maybe when my mother was, I was with my mother and she was like feasting me. She never tried to push and to feast me in such a way that all the food is being pushed down or being consumed all at once. She would take her little time and she would give you spoon by spoon by spoon until the plate is empty. And
Mhm.
that's what you should do. In the same breath, I believe that doesn't matter what the fare is, how big it is, you can also adopt that kind of strategy where you see, okay, it is huge. But what am I going to do? I'm going to identify it first. Once you identify, you're going to journal. Once you do that, then you're going to try to identify how I can break it down. In this case, the scenario that you gave is that this person maybe is trying to climb or trying to be a hiker or whatever it is. Okay, what is your biggest fear? Identify. I do not like heights. And then once you do document that, then you try to maybe dissect, try to put on the plate different topics, different sections, and you notate how many persons do I need to go onto this trip? Who can help me? How can I alleviate this height problem? How can I maybe get stronger and bolder in terms of maybe get some exercise done, maybe have some good support system around me, maybe have mentors or people who have been there before, and harness that and let them help you through walking you through this step to climb to Mount Kilimanjaro, wherever it is. And then in so doing, once you have those little bite steps, you try to eat one step, you try to take one step at a time. And with one step, you check mark. Another step, you check mark until you realize that you're now the day has come for you to climb that Mount Kilimanjaro. And you realize that all this issue and all this fear and this built up that you had, it was so much easier than you ever thought, because you were able to put it down on paper. You were able to put it into action. And with that, you're now able to climb and have a story to tell, that I once, but now I did, right? And so that's what you do. And so
Mhm.
that's the easiest strategy I can tell. My book, my journal will have all of that. But for now, I believe that for the listeners and the readers, I would encourage you to, write down, journal, and put all the little details in terms of how are you going to manage this fear. It doesn't matter what the fear is. First, what is the fear? Identified, and then try to narrow it down. Write your different little steps and take it off. Eat it chunk by chunk by chunk until everything is gone, just like the food plate is empty. And you never realize that you have mastered this. That's how I see it. That's a
Yeah,
strategy
yeah.
I would give the listener. Mhm.
I like that. There's a saying that says, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
Mhm.
time." It's the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. That is it.
One bite at a time. That's
And
right.
it is a longer process, Myrna. It's a longer process. But believe me, at the end of the day, you'll realize that it's not like a person or adult who will just wolf down the food and then
Right.
that's it. It is taking it longer, but I mean, longer steps, longer strides. But in the end, you will be like, okay, but I've achieved. Because in writing this book, back to this book, it took me some time, to me years, because all along I thought this was, like I said, uncharted territory. There's something I just cannot handle this. I'm not a writer. I'm not a talker. I'm not, yes, yeah, not too bad in terms of the talking because I have a prior experience, but with
Mhm.
writing, oh no, I'm more of a mathematical person. But then you realize that, I'm sorry, this is what it is. You've got to get the work done. It's action time. Yeah.
That's a good example of taking it one bite at a time is the book. I mean, because there's the steps and stuff like that. So that's amazing. And if you can take that same analogy to, a fear that you know that you need to conquer, because yes, you know that you need to conquer it because it is crippling you, it is making you small. So it's something that you identify, and once you
Mhm.
identify it, you should also say, I need to get over it. I need to be able to face it and at least still
Mhm.
do what I need to do.
Of
So
course.
yeah, so that's pretty good. All
Yeah.
right. So what was the spark behind you taking all these steps, making sure you wanted to book? What was the spark behind you wanting to create this book? Was there a moment in your faith journey or personal life when fear became something that you had to confront head on? What's your personal story on this?
Okay, and this is where it comes in. So you see, years ago, I had received a vision from God where he had attached my name to this book called Overcoming Fear. And this is something about, seeing fear as an obstacle and removing the obstacle. And so I wasn't fully sure what it meant, as I could not really relate to the word well. I couldn't relate to the word fear well, even though in my earlier days, I had a little bit. But once I got older, everything was maybe going as good as I thought it could. But then on September 11, 2022, I was preparing to speak a sermon at my local church. And that morning, while I was preparing to give that speech, I heard a very distressed sound coming from downstairs. And it was unlike anything I've ever heard before, Myrna. And the sound that I heard, I've never heard it in my house before. It brought chills to my spine. And so I ran downstairs to see my husband laying on the floor, and he was unconscious.
Wow.
And yeah, he was
On
unconscious.
September 11th. Wow.
Yes, yeah, it was, and
Wow.
it's so crazy. And he suffered a massive heart attack, and at that moment, he was, like I said, he was not unconscious. He was flat on his back. He suffered a severe heart attack that we had to call 911. And when the paramedics arrived, um, they performed and administered CPR, But before that, my son, who was 16 years old, he had experience. He was trained to as a lifeguard, so he was the one who helped to resuscitate my husband until the
Wow.
the fire truck and the ambulance came, and that was what crippled me to a point where I froze and I froze because I was alone in Canada. I had no one really here except my immediate family, my two boys and my husband. And this is what actually drove me and and reassure me that maybe this is now the point of my life where I need to now communicate this, write this, because I remember now while I was in the ICU, sitting with the doctors and all that in that room, I realized, wait a minute, is this a puzzle? This is a puzzle I'm trying to solve here or what? Because God, I remember when you told me to that you announced my name as Christine Jones Barkley, overcoming fear, and now this is what is I'm experiencing this, and this is
Path to
shock.
overcoming. I'm getting
This is
chills myself for you, girl.
yeah. So it's
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
so it was really, Myrna, it was really touching, and I went into a shock, and with that shock, I realized that there was something that I had to do. God came through for me at that moment. There was no one around, no one. I knew no one in this new neighborhood where I moved, which I explained in this book, and no one was there except God. And my children and I, we cried out to God for help, and He came and He answered. He answered my prayer. The prayer that I prayed was for God to show and to give him a pulse. And I was shocked when I was upstairs kneeling at my bedside. The paramedic guy, he came to me, he came up there and he said, Christine, I just want to let you know that your husband we found a pulse. And I was so
Oh
grateful
my gosh.
grateful for that. Yes, with that in mind, I decided I'm going to write. I'm going to keep thanking God. I'm going to keep encouraging others who have been through this situation, how they can ride through it, have no families, no friends, no one in this neighborhood. But God, He provided for me because during that time, I kept my faith. I believe and I knew that He was going to come through for me. My husband survived and he's now
Wow.
here. After all of that, we were able to celebrate the wins for sure, in the sense that he's alive. But we also continue to build our faith and trust God. And also, in terms of on the secular side, my husband has been very good, very how would I put it now is in terms of achieving. He has achieved so much, even for myself, in terms of moving up not only in the corporate ladder, but also he has his own tech company, and I'm just praising God right now because
Wow.
before that, I
That's
knew
real
that
fear, though. That's not
it
manufactured fear. That's real fear.
it
But
is
you're
real
right.
fear.
You can probably attack them the same way, which is pretty good.
Definitely. And at that
Yes.
moment, I realized that my fears don't define me, but I'm defined by my ability to hurdle over it.
Yes.
And through prayer, like I said, and trusting in God the Almighty, I realized that I can conquer and I can do anything because we have the authority. He has given us the authority and the power to trample over fear. So I'm excited and I just love to share that to the readers and to everyone out there.
Well, I'm glad I kept that for the end because that's a powerful way to end our conversation. Very powerful way.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So awesome. All right, so tell our listeners where they can pick up a copy of your book, if you have a website, if you have a social media handle, because yeah, so now they're interested in going and
Okay.
hearing your story.
Nice. Of course, of course. So in terms of my website, it's christinebarkley.com. Christine with a C, Chrisistine, Barkley, BARCLAY.com. That's my website. And Facebook, From Fair to Fearless, From Fair to Fearless. And for Instagram, it's Christine with a K, Christine underscore J.B. Christine underscore J.B. Yeah, and that's it. That's it, really.
My goodness, so we're calling you all kinds of names here. So we've got Christina is what I introduced you as. So
It's
is it
Christine.
Christina or Christine or the
Christine.
interchangeable? It's
Christine.
Christine.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So Christine, Barkley.com with a C and for your website and Christine underscore J.B on Instagram for
Ah,
with a K.
yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So
Right.
amazing. So I will link out to your website, link out to your book, and link out to your Instagram handle because
Thank
everything
you.
that I share on Instagram automatically shares to Facebook. So
Thank you.
I just need your Instagram handle. And
Yeah.
yes, and wow, you've got a powerful story. You've got a
Yes.
powerful word.
Thank you.
And you've got a powerful topic. So that's a
Thank you.
three-prong approach
Thank you.
because every one of us have fear. I mean,
Yeah.
little fear, big fear, or whatever, but
Whatever
we
it
all
is.
have fear and we have to learn how to go through them,
Mhm.
face them and become fearless. But and I like what we
Wow.
started off by saying, it's not that we're not going to have fear, but we have to learn to, work with them,
Work
right?
with it.
Yes, work
Yes.
with them, work with them.
Good.
Amazing.
Thank you.
All right, yes, this has been a powerful conversation and like being in church because it was a good word.
Thank you.
So I
Yeah.
appreciate being on the show.
Thank, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Author's Corner. Again, I'm going to say her name correctly this time. I'm speaking to Christine Jones Barkley, author of From Fear to Fearless. So definitely support her. Go pick up a copy of her book. It's going to be on Amazon. Follow her on Instagram or Facebook so that you can get the word because
Definitely.
she brings it. Helping
Definitely.
you with your journey of faith and your walk. So,
Thank
any
you.
last words as we wrap up?
Of course. So, I just wanted the listeners to know that they need to just take proactive measures, small steps, and your challenges will become leveled. Stay focused and be intentional in making those small but deliberate strides to overcome fear. Use your faith and continue to trust in God. Don't let fear stop you from making those waves. That is it.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. All right, guys, you heard her. So use faith as your guide and learn to conquer fear because if
Yeah.
you don't, you will stay small and tiny
Yeah.
in a little box. Break out of that box. All right. Thanks for
Definitely.
tuning in. Thank you, Christine, for being on the show. Until
Thank
next
you.
time, God bless.
God bless you. Take care.